Alright guys, today in this video I'm going to be talking about hot air chokes and hot air inlets for your choke on your carburetor. Particularly the Rochester quadrajet carburetors that GM used all through the 70s, into the 80s, back into the 60s. These carburetors a lot of people love them, a lot of people hate them. I'm not too particularly fond of this one because I've had nothing but problems and this is a brand new carburetor. This video I'm going to be covering the functionality of the hot air choke that these were equipped with all through the 70s and a little bit into the 80s, but they mostly shied away from it in the 80s, but this is an 83 and it still has one, so we'll talk about how it works and why my choke is not functioning correctly. So the issue I've been having is this is the throttle plate right here, and as you can see the choke is on. That's why that isn't resting against that. If I go over here, I can turn the choke off by touching it manually. And when the car is hot, you're supposed to be able to rev the gas, kick the gas pedal down, and it would kick that down. Mine isn't doing that. And normally people would ask, well, is your choke, operating correctly? Is it shimmed? Is it, bushed or whatever? And normally I'd check all that stuff, but this is a brand new carburetor. I got this a couple weeks ago, haven't driven it since because I haven't been able to figure out why my choke isn't operating correctly. So if you see right here, choke plate closes and it won't go back down. That's normal, the car is cold right now. However, yesterday, car was warm. I'd been running it for about a half hour, 45 minutes trying to adjust the carburetor, and after I turned it off, the choke stayed on, and when I started it back up and kicked the throttle, it would not go back down, so I had to manually come over here and turn it down. You're not supposed to have to do that, because if you're driving this car and you don't have the air cleaner off and you're not messing with the carburetor, there's no way to kick that down from inside the car. So you shouldn't, it should be kicking off once the car is warm. So normally, you check all your other choke components and see if they're still good, but since this is a brand new carburetor, the only thing left to check is my hot air inlet tubes. Without going too in depth, the hot air inlet tubes are a tube that goes from the back of the carburetor right here. That's what that little vacuum hose looking thing is. It goes back around, circles down over here. Get my light. Oh shit. There we go, sorry about that. This tube right here goes down over here, goes into the intake manifold, and you can't see it because it's inside here, but it'll loop around, come back after it dips down into the cylinder head a little bit, and comes back out here and then hooks up into your choke. Mine's disconnected right now because I'm going to take this carburetor off. Now the reason that this works is when the car is cold, the choke stays on. But once this hot air rises up through this tube and goes into there, it heats up the choke spring inside there and lets the choke off. The reason mine is not coming off is because this tube is broken down somewhere in there. That's the only thing it can be. So in this video I'm going to show you how to remove it and how to diagnose this and how it works and all that stuff. So alright, first things first, this is the old carburetor that came off of it. The adjustment, the float level and all that stuff inside this carburetor just completely screwed up. It's just an example carburetor I use in some of my videos and talking to my friends and stuff. This is the choke, and normally hot air would come into here from the intake manifold down here. That circulated from the back of the carburetor over here. Once that's all said and done, like I explained on the car already, your choke, once the car is warm, should disengage. This one is not. So you got to take the carburetor off, which is 4 bolts. You got one there, one here, and one here. I've already taken them off in the car. I'm going to go ahead and lift that carburetor off. I've done it so many times. It's scary. Usually you want to take a little video and map out where all your vacuum lines hook up and stuff because there is quite a few of them. But like I said, I've done this probably 6, 7, maybe even 8 times in the last week. So I'd really, I don't need to do the vacuum line diagram anymore. Alright, so I have lifted the carburetor off of the intake manifold. It's got a couple of extra linkages and stuff on it. There's the gasket that it sits on top of. I also have an extra one right there just in case I break it. Now I'll go back over to the car, and you'll see here's your inlet tube assembly. There's the inlet, there's the outlet. Down in here is where the tube assembly is going to be, and these bolts are quite rusty. How this rusted off, I'm not completely sure, because usually it has to be oxidized in order for that to happen, and since no fuel or air or anything touches these, I'm a little unsure how that happened. But nonetheless, what you're going to want to do is take both of these tubes out. As you can see, they just pop out just like that, and it's a little bit rusty, which leads me to believe that the inside is going to look nothing better than that. Take off the choke one, same deal, just sort of pull it off. Might need a little bit of convincing. And after a bit, came out. Looks about the same as the other side there, pretty rusty. So now the next thing you're going to want to do is take out these bolts. These are 1/2-inch standard bolts. You can use a wrench or a ratchet, doesn't really matter. Careful not to break them off. They usually won't, because this isn't typically a rusty area of the car, but I just figured I'd put it out there anyway. Alright, as you can see, I got them off. I had to use a breaker bar and an extension. Do not put too much torque on them. I almost thought I broke one off, but I did not. So, there are just these little bolts on them here. Not very long at all, as you can see. Don't drop it down the intake, that would suck. Make sure you keep this bracket here, because this bracket is going to be where your one of your AC lines or hoses holds onto, so it doesn't get caught in the fan or anything like that. So keep that bracket. And here we go, just pull this thing up out of the manifold. And surprisingly, this one doesn't look like it's actually in that bad of shape. As you can see, there's carbon all over it. But it actually doesn't look too terrible. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a new one of these online. You can find them for like 20 bucks or so probably on eBay. I'm going to replace it, and if it fixes the problem, I will let you guys know on my channel here. Thanks for watching.